So we're starting our Fashion Hour series for the semester. This is our first one of the fall 19 semester. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Fashion Incubator. My name is Nina Means. I'm the director here for the ACC Fashion Incubator. We were started with a grant with the City of Austin, and it was a really great opportunity for us to hone in on the needs of the fashion industry. One of the things that we really wanted to do with Fashion Hour was to talk about all the different mini components of what's actually happens in our industry. A lot of times people, you go shopping or you open up a magazine. If we are opening magazines anymore, we're, checking them out on Instagram or, looking at digital issues, what happens? How does that happen? Where does that come from? And so what we decided to do with Fashion Hour is to talk about all of the full-time jobs it takes to run the fashion industry, all the different people who are part of that world. So thank you so much for coming. We're really excited about talking about our topic. But before I get into the topic, I do want to let you know that this is actually filmed live, so you can actually get onto the live stream here today. Also, I have the link here for you. It's livestream.com/ACC/fashion. But you can also find us on Instagram at ACC Fashion Incubator, as well as on Twitter at ACC Fashion Incube. It's a little too long for Twitter. So what we wanted to do was to remind you that whenever you actually post or take pictures or video of what's happening today, that we'll actually repost that on our stories as well, and get a chance to share a little bit of that exposure and experience with all of our communities. So definitely make sure that you do that. Our hashtag is ACC Fashion Incubator. So without too much further ado, I wanted to take a minute to talk about our topic today, the life of a fashion photographer. I'm really excited to introduce our two guests that we have to illustrate what happens in the life of a fashion photographer. We have Todd White, who is an Emmy Award-winning videographer and photographer here in the Austin area. He comes from a background in tech, but has, I'll let him tell you about how he made the switch to fashion photography a little bit later. But he's done a variety of different products and video shoots and fashion shoots for, he's got People magazine, British Vogue. He's really been published in a variety of different magazines, as well as for some of the local artists here, and some international artists. Some of the country music singers like Carrie Underwood and some other celebrity singers, George Strait. So these are just some of his pieces, some of his work that he's done in fashion photography. Our next speaker is Frank Curry, and Frank is our homegrown. He is the ACC's own fashion photography professor, and we are so happy to have you here, Frank. Frank has a degree in cinema and I want to say your degree correctly, cinema and photography from Southern Illinois University, and his background. You've been teaching fashion photography here at the college for some time now. Should I say the year? But you've been in the business for a very long time, and our students are so lucky to have you as an instructor, and to know that you told me earlier that the classes are available over the summer. So whenever students are looking to take fashion photography classes with you and learn from your extensive knowledge, they come over the summertime. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, because we get a lot more light in the summer, and they can go longer and longer, and so.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. So you guys are shooting now, or just finishing the summer?
Yes, that's right. It just finished.
Wonderful. So what I want to ask both of you is, when did you make the leap into fashion photography?
Well, for me, it wasn't so intentional. I had a business in Austin for 25 years. I had a studio, and I was just a generalist. There were a lot of people who were doing celebrity-type photography, and what happened is that I would get some sort of product work, which is what I normally did, and then clients would say, and while you're here, can you shoot this? Can you shoot some clothes? And can you shoot... And so it was a gradual thing. And you realize that people don't go out sort of specifically looking for necessarily the best photographer they can, they look for someone they can work with. And that's how it happens.
Absolutely. I wanted to just, before I get into Todd's answer about that, I wanted to show just a few images of some of your work too.
No, this is some student work.
Student work,
Yes,
but under your tutelage.
That's correct.
Right. So you've really shown that you've been able to nurture students to getting this quality of work.
Mhm.
Excellent. Wonderful. So Todd, tell us about your leap.
So fashion photography for me is a second career. I started out, I spent 26 years in the corporate world doing everything from technology education at USAA in San Antonio to ending up with Cisco Systems, and I was doing operations management for call centers and doing mergers and acquisitions. And one day just decided it was time for a change and walked away from a corporate job and dove straight into fashion photography and did that about 8.5 years ago.
Wow. Wow. So, so what's a typical day like for you as a professor, as a photographer, you know, teaching others to shooting, you know, on location? What's that like for you guys?
Well, I think I can speak about when I was in business and ran a studio. One of the things that was most difficult to tell people is how little time you spend actually doing the photography. You spend a lot of time scouting, getting things ready, guaranteeing your client that their image, their idea is what you're going to end up with. You can't have mistakes. You've got to deliver the goods. And so probably the photography part of it was just 10%. And on those days you were shooting, they were frantic. It was sheer terror. You're shooting outside. It decides to rain. And,
oh, no.
And you know, I learned this later that I stopped canceling shoots over weather because it spent so much time getting ready. And to tell a dozen people that we were canceling, I realized, you know, when it rains, it doesn't rain all the time, and you could just work around it.
Right.
So it was learning those things that
Right.
was difficult.
Right. But I mean, what I really appreciate you sharing about your typical day as well is that, like, you know, sometimes we think, oh, this is what you do, but you're spending so much time getting prepared to do what you do.
And, you know, then if that's what you do, you've got to get paid.
Right.
So you bill, and you've got to run a business, and you've got to understand taxes, and you've got to keep your equipment. You wear so many hats. It's frightening.
What about for you, Todd? What's a typical
I
day
mean,
like
it's
for you?
that right there really sums it up. I mean, there's everything from the billing side of it, the insurance side, the planning, the location scouting. I'm really glad I have a wife that is totally fine getting up on a Saturday morning, getting a cup of coffee, hitting the car, and we just take off and we scout. And I give her the phone and we just mark locations that I think will be
Oh,
good
wow.
for future shoots. And that's like a morning together, hanging out. And that all is part of it. And like I said, the billing side of it, and also chasing new business down. There's never a time where you're not really looking and seeing what's the next boutique, what's the next designer, what's the next place that I may want to do business with, and then reaching out to them.
That's awesome. So tell me a little bit more about the scouting process. You know, what goes into that whenever you mark one with your, you know, you and your wife are out driving across Texas, you know, whenever you say, here, this is the spot we want to come back to, what signifies that for you?
I have a list of clients in my mind that I'm running through and knowing what's coming up with the shoots that I have planned. So it's finding interesting walls, interesting textures. To Frank's point also, where can I get away with a shoot that if it's raining, that's my backup location. That's where I can go. I've got coverage and so on. I'm also looking for places that I can shoot in the middle of the day and find shade, because sometimes it doesn't always work that I can shoot at 8 in the morning or at 6 or 7 at night. So when in the crappiest light of the day, can I say that?
Yes, you can.
Cool.
It's okay.
Can I actually shoot and still get the shots I need for the client? And so there's a lot that goes into it as well. And even looking at plants and foliage and colors and everything else that all comes into that scene.
And it's really funny because the client's ideas of where to shoot are not typically ours.
Oh, farthest thing off.
We're typically looking for a good parking garage nearby because it's a big white surface. And if you're shooting in the middle of the day, it's a nice big reflector. And you're like, great, I get free light. And it's so hard to convince a client, yeah, we're going to be shooting in a parking garage, right?
But I love parking
Yeah.
garages.
Oh, I do
I
too.
love a good parking garage.
It's the
Or where
best.
can you shoot without getting in trouble? I know that there was a time where I shot with Nina, and
Yes.
we were shooting in a building, and the people in the building came out and asked us to kindly relocate.
Yes.
So
Yes, no, I
it's
remember
that
very
whole
well.
quickly, how fast can I get in and get out before someone comes out?
Right, yeah. Some places I think it was somewhere downtown that had, it was like this sidewalk was, a part of their building. So we were like, oops, sorry, too close. I also have a brand, and so I've worked with Todd in the past to shoot my collections. And so this is one of the reasons why I was like, Todd, we've got to come in and have this conversation. And then I met Frank, at the Boots and Bats Gala last year, which is coming up here again in just
Yes,
a
it
couple
is.
of months. And so I was like, Frank, we've got to work together. We have to figure out what we're going to do to connect our programs and to create meaningful work for our students. So I'm so glad to have both of you here. One of the conversations we started to have earlier was about the advent of the cell phone photographer. And, what does that mean for the trained fashion photographer? And, does it ever work? Does that, what does that really mean for, business? How does that translate? Can you take really good pictures on your cell phone? Is it appropriate? It's a lot of questions.
I guess I can take that. The cell phone is an amazing machine. It's an amazing camera. And there's a lot of things it does really well. Selfies, for one. But once you start understanding the algorithms that go into it and the way it works and the lenses and how the cell phone works, I think it's great for taking food photographs. I think it's unparalleled at that. It's about the right angle. It can do a lot of things. But once you start going into product work, or especially fashion work, you really do need a long lens and a tripod, and you start needing to be able to control light. So cell phones, I think as Todd said, you said they work well for if you're an Instagram.
For influencers, Instagram people grabbing your shot of the day of your outfit and so on and so forth, works perfectly for that. But true, serious fashion photography, try to blow that image up and zoom into it and crop it, it just starts to fall apart.
So whenever you say it falls apart, whenever you go larger scale with this what does that mean for a casual viewer? What would they see?
You'll start to see where it'll pixelate. You'll start to see those pixels more and more.
Okay.
There'll be imperfections in the image that you can't deal with and do anything with, really. And you can't really recover that either.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it's whenever we get into something like this image that looks like it was, shot on a serious camera. That's what I call it because I'm not a photographer. I'm sure you could tell us exactly what camera or kind of camera should be used for something like this. But you're saying that whenever it zooms in, that the integrity of the image literally starts to fall apart.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha. So interesting.
But I will say, for the fun of it, that for photographers, the cell phone has amazing tools that you can use, though, to help you as you plan your shoot and while you're on your shoot. I used a light meter on my phone a lot for measuring light, to looking at certain settings that I want to use for the camera. And also I can look at the direction of the sun. There's great little apps like Sunseeker and things that I can get on set and I can be like, we have great light here, but guess what? In 30 minutes, we're going to have the sun. It's going to cut into this spot, so whatever outfits we're going to shoot now, do it fast and move on because we're going to lose this light or we're going to lose the shade.
Oh, that's great.
So they're great apps you can use for things like that help with shoot planning.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know that they had that. That's awesome. So whenever you're looking at, this is kind of still going into, the cell phone shooter versus someone who's using a different kind of camera, what would we say would be kind of the differences between, I guess, what an amateur versus a professional, would be doing in terms of, setting up a shoot and, getting the right lighting? What would be the differences there?
Well, I think photography is a lot like ballet. You watch a ballet and you see it, and it's like, how hard can it be? You just get up on your toes, and then when music, there's a crescendo, you just jump and then you catch someone. Well, you start trying to do that. It's not.
Yeah, it's not
es-
quite that simple.
Especially, since we've been seeing since we were born, we think, how hard can seeing be? You just look and it's there. Well, what you forget is all the things that go into a photograph. Light is very important. Angle is very important. The communication with the model is important. And these are all ineffable things that you can't always see. And you can only explain it to a client, like, here's the difference between when I get connection with my model and when I don't have it. Here's the difference between the appropriate lens and another one. Here's a different angle.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I believe from our previous conversation, you guys were also talking about how amateurs and professionals have different business practices as well. Who's got the deadline and how fast those products turn around as well. I mean, I love what you're saying too about just to kind of backtrack a bit about how you're getting that connection with the model. A lot of times if you're not experienced, you're not going to know when you've really gotten the shot, and so you may have moved on and there's no connection, or the picture dies once you actually go into digital or into print, and there's no connection with the customer, no connection with, in fashion, we can't get away with that. Like if we're not connecting with the customer, they're going to flip right through, so I appreciate what you said on that, but I also would love to hear a little bit more about the amateur and professional differences in terms of the business. And I think you also mentioned some of that before.
I mean, we have things like we have to deal with deadlines. Clients will hire us to shoot collections that are going to be launched at a certain time, and they've got to get that to print and get their line sheets done and ready to go to market and so on. So we've got very hard deadlines that we have to work with. And unfortunately, sometimes clients will come to us at the last minute, and it is the nature of the game, where they had a delay in manufacturing, they get the product to us, and they have like a 3-day turnaround. Or as you mentioned when we were talking before, a 5 p.m. deadline the day we shoot. So those are very real things that then the stress that we're under, also we can produce the product because we've done this for so long and we know we can make that happen. But it also goes into how we shoot it, because we shoot it correctly. I'm always a big fan of get it right in camera. That's the least amount of time I have to spend in post-production. And I'll be honest, I hate Photoshop. Hate it with a passion. Absolutely do. So I do everything I can on set to get that shot right in camera.
And a lot of students, for example, will say things, I bet you shoot RAW. And it's like, yeah, when I can, but there's a lot of times I've shot JPEGs because, and I'm sure you have too, because the client needs it as soon as the shoot's done. And you hit it, and you've got to hit it, and you've got to be careful. You have no post-production ability because you got a deadline.
Yeah. And for a professional, you know when that JPEG is right, so, and I think you have a little bit more room to actually work that way, whereas, I would never try to do something like that, but I'm definitely not a photographer. I'm a designer.
And we were talking before, even with the differences of professional versus amateur. We run with multiple camera bodies, multiple lenses, 6, 7, 8 batteries that we have, backup flashes, the whole deal, because invariably something will go wrong on sets, something will go south, and you just need to be prepared because we still have to deliver a product.
Speaking of product, can you tell us a little bit about the differences between shooting apparel and garment versus shooting like the products, like whenever you're doing like handbags or jewelry or something like that? Can you give us a bit of what happens differently?
I did. I started mostly doing product type work, and it's one of those things where the work on it's invisible. Once you're photographing glass, for example, combined with reflective metal, it's so interesting because you're building these reflections, and you have to explain to people. It looks really easy. You look at an ad for perfume. It's like, how hard can that be? Well, it takes a day to get everything right, and it's just impeccable. And so I did a lot of that. And typically when you see an ad for perfume or makeup, you'll see the product, and there's a product photographer that's been very carefully working at all the correct angles, making sure all the reflections are nice, that the packaging looks really great. And then there'll be someone doing a lifestyle or an action photograph. You'll get to see, this is the perfume you buy, and if you buy this perfume and wear it, then you'll have a great day and a great life in New York City.
It magically transports you to New York.
Yes, it does.
With a cab that magically stops for you as well. They don't normally stop, by the way. That's kind of also a fictitious thing, but
Of course.
you know, that's the dream, right? You sold the dream. No, I appreciate that. You know, I think that sometimes whenever we're looking at, you're right, we oversimplify what we see. We kind of take it for granted that there was a lot of work that kind of went in behind the scenes to make that image come to life. You know,
And even a lifestyle shot, same thing.
absolutely.
Behind that photograph, there's a hair and makeup team, there's a stylist that's on set, and usually before that shot happens, makeup's been retouched, garment's been straightened, hair's been fixed, and then we go get that shot. And we get it, we come back, process starts all over again.
Right. We have a stylist on our team, Michelle Washington. She does a lot of really great work for a variety of magazines here, but also I believe she's also a GQ insider, and you know does phenomenal work on set. And this is like a day in her life is like, oh yeah, I know all about how to frame that shot and how to make sure that the model looks perfect and the garment looks right, and how to communicate back with the photographer, all of that stuff.
And the secret in all of that is binder clamps in the back to make sure that...
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Lots of binder
Oh,
clips.
yes.
Yes, those actually work. So if you guys don't know what we're talking about, you know the office supplies. You go to Office Depot and now you've got like whole clip for like all of your papers. You know, we use those sometimes to pin out the garments on the models to make sure that they're hanging correctly, or if something's not holding up, you know, that we've got, you know, lots of things that we can quickly put on, take off, you know, so that we can get the right shot.
You know, and oddly enough, as a photographer over the years that I've learned that sometimes if I can't have a stylist, then I need to have that stuff available to me. So I actually carry a little photo shoot survival kit in my car with everything from
So smart.
powder, concealer, hairspray. I've
Wow.
got rolling brushes. I've got binder clips. I've got everything I think I need
That's
to
amazing.
make it happen. Double-sided tape, the whole thing.
Amazing. So
I never
perfect.
thought I'd have a makeup kit, but I do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, if you're shooting fashion, you absolutely need one of those. So no, that's perfect. You know, in terms of the behind the scenes, a lot of what's happening in fashion right now is really highlighting more diversity in fashion and a variety of colors and sizes and shapes. How does that affect what you guys are teaching and doing on set and, you know, learning in terms of, you know, photography?
For me, it's working with a variety of different people, and like you mentioned, shapes and sizes and color and everything. And so it's a challenge because the way that you photograph and you shoot someone that has different skin tones changes. And if we want to put everybody in the same picture, that changes as well. So you have to know how to balance the light, where to put light, and also with what clothing that the people are wearing as well. You have to really plan all of that out. Because let's face it, someone with very fair skin, I typically don't want to put them in an all-white outfit because it just washes the person out. So it's about learning and understanding that as a fashion photographer. And then also with curve models, you need to shoot them a little bit differently. And the way that you shoot longer lenses, you know, help compress and help with that. Now, I love shooting curve models. I've had a few agencies send me curve models recently, and I've had a blast working with curve models. And I'm actually looking to do a couple of campaign shoots with them, and it's so much fun. I just love it. There's a certain amount of a reckless abandon, too, that they just love to have, you know? And I like it because we can have burgers and fries and sodas on set, and it's great. Because they don't care. It's who they are, and they
Yeah.
embrace it. And
Yeah.
it's wonderful to celebrate that. It really, really is.
Absolutely. I think that, you know, what I really appreciate about where fashion is going is that it is embracing all kinds of people, you know, and I think one of the things that we don't typically think about is, you know, what you brought up earlier about how you're setting up the set to be able to accomplish the color of the clothing, the color of the skin, the dimensions of the model. That all of those things are happening behind the scenes without any of us being aware of it. And then we see this one beautiful image of a diaspora of people, and you're like, oh my goodness, that's gorgeous. What an amazing shot. And you don't think twice about how that shot came to be. It's really incredible. In terms of I wanted to show some of you guys' work, and we'll cut over to the first video of Todd. But I wanted to show, this is the Stilo's 2019 shoot. And I wanted to show that we're not always just talking about stills when we're talking about photography these days. We're looking at, additionally, we're adding in video into this world, especially the way that content is being delivered and utilized. And so we wanted to also bring video into the mix. So in terms of the setup for something like this versus a photo shoot, is the setup for something like this the same or different, or are you kind of going through a similar exercise as you did for the scouting the location and working with the store, the designer?
We did the stills and the video for this same day, same location for this, but it's finding whenever you're shooting photos, you shoot that and you're focusing on the stills, your light's not going to really change that much. When I've got somebody moving around, now it's about mapping out the location and knowing where my hotspots are going to be. And so I have the model walk through that scene multiple times to make sure that I don't get any weird shadows and stuff that show up. And if I do, then I choose if it's okay or not. And so it's a little more planning on that. It's also working out the movement. You'd be surprised, a lot of models don't know how to shoot video. They think that shooting video is just the same thing as shooting stills. They're just going to move a little bit faster. And that's not the way that actually works. And so sometimes it's training the model, and this is what I need, this is a movement I need, and it's multiple takes out of it. And watching the garments too. So like the pair of pants with the snakeskin pants, that had a binder clip on the back, so I couldn't have her turn around and I couldn't have her move.
There's no spinning on that one.
And the hand in the pocket was a very delicate hand in and hand coming out of the pocket. Done it too abruptly, would have popped the binder clip in the back, and then it would have been a different story. So it's planning all of that out and working with the model on that and coordinating it.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit more. So were there any other considerations regarding like the color of the garments in this space, or did you guys make certain decisions on what went on the model in different locations? Because I noticed that the shot with the snake and the more nude top was in this more tonal shot, but then whenever we got into the color, it was much more dynamic, and so I imagine that was on purpose. But
it was on purpose.
Okay.
We shot at Mayfield Park, and there's a lot of different variety of locations to shoot around there, and so choices were made with like the snakeskin pants with that top. It was around those neutral tones, and then taking the garments, like the colorful ones, and putting them out into the flowers and the greenery and things like that. Absolutely.
It's really well done. It's beautiful. What I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about, one of the things that we've kind of been talking around, but we haven't really dug really deeply into, is who is on set with you. We've talked a little bit about the stylist. Who else is there? Like, who are all the people that are supposed to be a collaborative team making all of this happen?
Well, it depends on the budget of the shoot. So, of course, there's a model, there's a stylist, there's makeup artist. Sometimes it's also a hair and makeup artist, but sometimes it's separate. Then on the photographer side, you have a photographer, you have a lighting assistant, and then you have a digital computer assistant, and then you have clients. And sometimes they just, sometimes you have an account director, and sometimes you have the owner because they think it'll be fun, and sometimes they just keep piling on. And
There could be a number of people showing up to the photo
it
shoot.
makes lunch bill really expensive.
Oh, I believe
Yeah.
it. There's a lot of lunch going around. Everyone's
And
like, oh, I
then-
heard there was food here.
Well, yeah, there's food, and then you've got to decide, what does everyone like? And I've decided that's veggie sushi.
Veggie sushi, done. You're like, well, today that's what everyone's having, right? Yeah, we're like, we're eating whatever you're serving. So what I appreciate about that is that a lot of times whenever we go into this space, we really bootstrap, because we don't know, one, it's the budget, like you said, but then we don't know who else really should be here to take it to the next level. So I appreciate that you're kind of starting to illuminate that. But that's something that you're also like teaching your students as well in class, right? Like they're learning like all the different, pieces. We've got one of your videos kind of showing the behind the scenes of I think it's called Shooting Dakota. And so you want to kind of set it up a little bit about like what that was and what that experience was for the students?
Yes, the photographer here is, she was a former student. She's now teaching here in our department, but she was doing this is the whole story of the whole set. And now this is in studio, so the lighting is very different. So this is strobe, this is flash, so it's momentary. So you get a lot more control of the light, but everything you bring into the set you have to bring it in. There's no discovery, but there's also not that many surprises like when you talk about light and weather coming in.
Well, that's great. I'm glad that we have the juxtaposition of the outdoor shooting and the indoor shooting. So let's roll the video.
That. And it really did go that fast. I'm joking.
They are speedy. Some interns from him then? That's how
I have short hair, so it looks pretty much like but like we can put these on and I can like chop like super short fringe. I have like this little top guy. Same thing. I can make like little fringes and stuff. These I can cut so it doesn't matter. I have like a little bob too. We can chop that up. That one's the one. First though.
So which leg are you guys want to start with first?
Let's just do like the second one first because we know the silver's going.
Okay.
Yeah, so just like that.
Yeah, I like that. Beautiful.
It's my new avatar. I love those.
Thank you.
I think I love those just because it's different than the other ones.
Yeah,
It's
Beautiful.
Thanks.
So tell me, whenever you guys shoot to the screen, so like the digital assistant's working what comes off of the camera, what are they doing whenever it comes across the, the laptop or the monitor or what have you? Like, what's happening there?
They are looking for problems. They're making sure that the focus is correct. They're making sure that they're looking that there's nothing out of place, that all the lights are firing. There's a lot of things going on at the same time. Go ahead.
I shoot a lot of jewelry in studio for customers, and so we definitely are looking for bad reflections, lining it up just right. For shooting earrings, little bits of hair that might be hanging behind that need to be tucked in and pulled back and things like that. And just weird reflections, and are the diamonds getting enough of a sparkle or not, and what needs to be adjusted to take care of that.
Absolutely. And the reason why we do all of those things is so they sell, so that people want to purchase them, or they will feel connected to the shot, or they don't get distracted, by things that are getting in the way of the enjoyment of the product, or the enjoyment of the moment, or the emotion that we want them to feel. So, I'm really amazed by how much thought and work goes into you see it and you enjoy it, but you have no idea how much you guys have done ahead of time and how many other people have been alongside of you to make it all happen. So the one thing I feel like I should ask, if I were a photographer in the audience, and I'm sure they'll be asking you questions here in just a moment, I would ask, what's your favorite cameras? if you can't choose just one.
I don't. I'll use anything. I'm really kind of agnostic. There are things I like about certain brands and other ones, but I just need a light-sensitive sensor, and it can be film or digital, and a good, sharp lens. And I can do anything with that and a V-flat, right, and a reflector.
So pretty much, is it really, it's about the person who's using it and not what the piece is?
It is. I mean, there are some cameras that are, in my opinion, better than others, and they handle things a little bit differently. I'm a huge fan of using mirrorless cameras right now. That's primarily what I shoot on, are mirrorless cameras. I'm currently using the Lumix S1 system is what I have right now that I use. Mainly because I do so much video. It's one of the better that handle video out there right now on the market from a DSLR, if you will, perspective. And then, like he said, a good V-flat, a reflector, and a very high quality light. That's glass and lighting is where I think you put your money. I think you want to have amazing sharp lenses that can get you the quality that you need, and that's so important. Kit lenses will fall apart fast on some of the detail work that we have to do. And then also lighting. You want lighting that will fire. It will be the same color temperature and the same light intensity across multiple shots. And that's going to cost you, but it's well worth the investment.
That's awesome. So what I want to do now is give us a moment to open up for question and answer. These guys have years and years of experience and have worked on a variety of different kinds of projects. We'd love to open it up to the audience. So anyone who has questions, just raise your hand. We have a microphone coming around here. So we have one question here up front.
Hello. Yeah, I have a question for each one of you. Was there ever a shoot where it seemed like it was going to be a disaster, but it turned out to be something really fabulous, like a rainstorm to where the person got drenched and then they looked great in the shot, you know, or something similar, or something broke and you had to do something different and it just came out wonderful.
I think you should look for disasters in every single shoot. I think of photography in a way to sort of have that edge. It's like running full speed towards a cliff and trying to stop just before you fall over. And when you have things that have that edge, and when you have things that are movement and about to happen, you can see it. You can get very, very staid, very predictable images. And I certainly did a lot of those. But it's the accidents that you actually actively court. And it's scary because you've got to protect yourself, you've got to have something, and then you have something that's about to fall apart, and you convince the art director that this is actually what you want.
Rainstorms are interesting whenever they come along because if it rains just long enough and you start to get puddles on the ground, now it becomes a part of the set that becomes dynamic. Now I can shoot reflections off the puddle back up towards the model, or I can also get an element of a splash if I'm shooting movement, which I love shooting lifestyle with movement because now I can incorporate that splash into the shot and it just creates an element of truth and life and just, yeah, it works.
That's awesome.
But you have to think about that. You have to think instead of going, oh no, it's raining. It's like, wait a minute, hold on, this could work out.
Life is usually smarter than you are. That's, I think, what you've got to learn.
I like that. I think I saw another question on this side.
How do you charge? Is there a consistent fee structure, or does it change based on your client?
I think it definitely can change based upon the project. For me, it's about, are we doing photography? Are we doing photography and videography as well? What's the full team that we're bringing in? Are we shooting in the studio? Are we going to be shooting only outdoors? There's a lot of things that go into it. And of course, like, and as Frank mentioned, are they going to throw in that, oh, can you grab some product shots while you're there as well? Because that changes things too, because that definitely makes the shoot longer as well. So there's a lot of components that go into it when you're setting up a fee, for sure. And so there's not a one-size-fits-all.
No, that makes sense. The scope of work would change how much you would want to charge. Is there a certain, I'm wondering if it's also a question about rate per hour, or is it really more around?
Rate besides just the quantity of different activities you do, or does it change based on whether you're working for a high-end client or a low-end client, despite the same work?
I tend to not change my rates. A client is the client, and so I don't really look at someone and say, oh my gosh, I'm going to charge them more because they're a bigger name. That's just not how I work. And I wouldn't want to try to keep track of that for the next time either. So I have a rate.
I don't normally tell my clients this, but I use a formula, good, fast, cheap, pick any two. And so sometimes you'll have a client who wants something really good and really fast, and what you have to do is throw money at any kind of problem, and they're generally okay with that. And then there's clients that don't have a budget, and what you say is, look, I can do it, but if something comes along that's going to pay me more, I'm going to take it. And so you got to give somewhere.
And rates really is also about client education. We were talking about this out in the hallway before we even started. If a client wants to go with a cheaper model or a friend to do the photo shoot, they have to understand our rate per hour to coach that person to get the shot that we need is going to cost more than they'd have gone ahead and put the money into getting a professional model in here, and the shoot can stay within a budget and within a time frame. And so, and even with getting it right in camera and having the stylist and the hair and the makeup, our retouching per hour rate to fix all that in Photoshop after is going to be more if they'd have gone ahead and factored into the budget.
I think we had another question up front.
My question will be about facial expressions of the models. I'm always intrigued by that model look, that flat affect that we see so much. And I wonder who decides, I guess it depends on the situation, but does the photographer decide that, or the client, or the model has this habit of looking that way? And is it because it has a function, in other words, to distract from the facial expression to the product itself, or is it because audiences want models that look different, so different than what they see around them, that it's intriguing? What's with that? It's so unnatural, and is there any a movement to change that?
I suppose I have my own view of that if you have an sort of inscrutable look, you can't necessarily attach anything to it. So it is mutable at any point. And I think what that does is tend to bring a lot more of the emphasis into the wardrobe, into the clothing. And if you look at someone, for example, who's smiling, it's done. You know exactly they're happy, and then there's no mystery, there's nothing for the viewer to sort of bring to it. So if you look at things that are interesting, there's always a sense of incompleteness that you as the viewer of the thing has to fulfill and complete. And then there's participation, and then you get buy-in, and then you have an interaction.
That is interesting.
And I would say it really depends upon the wardrobe and the client and the type of shoot that you're doing. If I'm shooting something that's more of a streetwear editorial vibe, then those clients tend to want the models that are not going to be the smiley, happy-go-lucky lifestyle. They're wanting that more of that fierce look. And so there are models that are really good at that. And I would not take one of those models and put them into a happy, fun lifestyle shoot, because it won't look right. And let's be honest, and I've had models, we've talked about this, they just don't know how to smile and look happy. And it is what it is. And so I know with those models, they're not going to be hired for those particular jobs. And they're really good at that. But when I need that look, I'm going to go to them and not to my happy, smiley-go-lucky person. And you begin to know that. I have a list of models that I've worked with over the years that I have my own notes, difficult on set. Just kidding. Well, I'm not
Actually,
really.
maybe you
but,
should have that.
right? But, great smile. I have some that I'm like, you know what, not good for close-ups because they have skin issues. But I shoot them far away, they're great. And you begin to build that list of models that you work with, and you know that. And you can make the right recommendation to the client, because the client doesn't know that usually and needs help educating them also.
Absolutely. No, I feel like I relied heavily on you when I was new to Austin. And I said, hey, Todd, I don't know where to shoot. Hey, Todd, I don't know who I should be working with, who's local, who's within my budget. And you already had a list of people that you'd worked with before, so it was really helpful to have that. I think that on the brand direction side, for my brand, I believe I presented you and the makeup artist with a brand deck and what the intention of the brand was, so it's more along the lines of what you discussed. But I really love what you said, Frank, about the kind of the co-creation with the viewer. That's something that I think we miss a lot, but it's happening all the time. In terms of advertising, it's like there's that. It needs to draw you in and keep you there long enough to think about, do I want to buy this? And do it. And sometimes it's more than that. It's the emotional connection. It's the brand connection to your values. But really, when we do fashion photography, the purpose is to drive sales. And it's audience engagement. So thank you so much for that comment. That was really helpful. As we're wrapping up here, were there any other questions before? Okay, let me get the last question.
As someone who's building a portfolio, what are your thoughts on how to strategize that? I've been told that I should seek out, a look or a brand for myself so that I'm easily recognized. On the other hand, I feel as someone who's starting out, I don't want to pigeonhole myself into, oh, she just does that, that's her thing. And I would like to give breadth, but also depth. So what are your thoughts on that for building a portfolio?
If you don't pigeonhole yourself, someone else will. I hate to say it. I once heard someone describe style as self-plagiarism. And I think it's important to have something. People go out and try and get a certain look, and they will ask you for that look. We want that look. They will eventually ask you to do other things, and you'll become a jack of all trades, as it were. But to start out with, you need a clear voice, I think.
You really do. A lot of photographers, and I'm just going to use this term, photographers will be generalists and do a little bit of everything. And over time, you will begin to narrow down and find your voice, and you will then know what things you do not want to shoot and what you don't want to be a part of. Like when I first started many years ago, I did some weddings and some families and so on and so forth, and now I don't shoot weddings unless they really, really interest me. And I do not shoot families, I do not shoot babies, I do not, there's just things you learn not to do. We can be out traveling with our TV show, and the crew is like, oh my gosh, there's an amazing sunset, why isn't your camera out? I'm like, that doesn't inspire me. Put a model with a great outfit, I'll shoot that all day long with that background, but just it by itself doesn't inspire me. And you learn that about yourself as you move through your career.
That's great. On that topic, if you could give our audience one takeaway as we are closing out, what would be the takeaway you'd give them from your experience as a photographer, as a professor, as a business owner?
Know your craft, and know your craft. And never stop learning as well. Don't be stagnant. There's always somebody chasing you from behind.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think I would agree. Do what you say you're going to do. That's all. As they used to give advice to actors, show up on time, know your lines, and don't bump into the furniture.
Perfect. Well, guys, I have to say thank you so much. We've really enjoyed having both of you. I feel like we had such a great range of experiences, in video and, working with celebrity clients, doing, boutiques and businesses like that, having your own business, having, been in, various locations across the country, then teaching our students how to create a real fashion shoot inside all of this strobe. I mean, it was really impressive what quality you were able to get out of the students, and then them being able to come back and start teaching other students. It's incredible. So thank you both for being here.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thank you.
I wanted to close out with just a few additional announcements. Just to let you guys know, again, we are supported by City of Austin. We were started with the Economic Development Department and their investment in really seeing the fashion industry grow here. We've been identified as a fashion industry growth area here in Austin. You may be surprised to hear that, but there's a ton of industry that is on the rise, and the Fashion Incubator is really their answer to that, alongside of ACC and Gerber Technology, which is our high technology solution. So you may have seen some of that equipment as you were walking in today. All of that is a very high technology solution for how we're planning on, conquering this fashion industry. ACC TV, we have to say thank you so much for all of the incredible work that they've done to be able to bring our stories to the forefront. ACC TV, along with the Teaching and Learning Excellence Division, films us here every single month for every single episode and turn around these really great videos that you can go back and binge watch on YouTube. So go find their YouTube channel, ACC TV, and search Fashion Hour. And you can catch up on all of our episodes from last February until now and catch up on all of that. And we're also on Channel 19 on Spectrum. So if you're watching on TV, you can also catch us then. Again, for any of your pictures or video, we will tag you. So it's at ACC Fashion Incubator. You can also find us on Twitter at ACC Fashion Incube. And so that's where you can find us there, or just search the hashtag ACC Fashion Incubator. Additionally, if you want to connect with Todd or with Frank, you can find them on Instagram at the DPP for Frank and at Todd White And both of those are on Instagram. So direct message or talk with them after. You know, that's a really great way for you to connect with our two guests. So again, thank you so much. We're so happy to have you. And that's it for Fashion Hour.